Hey, welcome back, everyone. The time is going to come when you're going to sit across from someone who, more than likely, has never worn a uniform. They've never deployed or worked shifts, never responded to the calls or carried the responsibilities that you've handled. They won't know what it feels like to make decisions when there wasn't time to evaluate all the options, or there's no guarantee that everyone will go home safely. They won't know the weight of those moments because they were never in uniform. As a veteran or first responder, the crucibles you've survived, the moments when everything is chaotic, when the sirens and the people are screaming, or when you had to make a split-second decision with lives on the line. That's not your liability. That's your elite credentials. Think about it. The corporate world spends a garbage ton of money trying to teach their members how to handle stress and pivot during crisis. They go to seminars and retreats to learn what we do every day of our careers. You already have clarity under pressure. You know how to rapidly triage complex situations, and you know how to lead teams that are often stretched thin and exhausted. Basically, you've attended a masterclass in cognitive flexibility and emotional intelligence. Yet one of the biggest mistakes many veterans and first responders make is believing those moments are something you have to either hide or defend. Maybe because you're worried people won't understand. Maybe you think talking about those experiences sounds like you're just trying to brag, so you might avoid them altogether. The crucible itself isn't your credential. The person that it forged is. But the challenge is recognizing your qualities before your transition arrives and learning how to translate them into language someone outside these professions can understand. This time it's about turning your highest friction experiences into proof that you're the most resilient asset any organization can hire. But first, we're going to take a minute and acknowledge a sponsor of the podcast. And then we'll get back into this topic more. As a first responder, control isn't optional. It's how you do your job. But when it comes to buying or refinancing a home, most lenders don't get your world. Police Mortgage does. They specialize in working with first responders, walking you through the process, breaking down your options, and helping you lock in competitive rates without the runaround. Take control of your financial future with people who have your back. Visit policemortgage.com or call 312-499-8878. Police Mortgage, for first responders who are second to none. The first thing you need to understand is when you eventually sit down for an interview with that person across the table, they won't be trying to determine whether you've lived through something difficult. The question they're going to need to answer is what kind of team member and leader you are. Now, I know that sounds obvious, but it's where so many veterans and first responders unintentionally miss their mark. Because when we start talking, we default to telling stories. We'll talk about the pursuits, the deployments, the structure fires, the active shooter incidents, the disaster responses, the homicide investigations, or any list of things. But we tell them like we're giving a book report. We'll spend 5 minutes walking someone through the cool parts of the whole scenario, as opposed to explaining what you learned from the experiences and how you'll take that knowledge and help this new environment succeed. Outside of our profession, the context and the details of the incidents don't necessarily matter. A hiring manager isn't evaluating the event. They're evaluating you. They're listening for the clues and keywords. How you think, how you communicate, how you prioritize, how you respond when the original plan falls apart. It's not that the stories aren't interesting and probably entertaining, but they're going to be more interested in how you were a factor in the outcome of the incident. That's what sells you. The event is simply the environment where those qualities showed up. Think about it this way. Imagine two people. Both responded to the same incident. Both experienced the exact same thing. but one talks about what happened and what they did. Things like delegating responsibilities, adapting to changing circumstances, communicating clearly, and keeping the team moving forward. Whereas the other person talks about how hot it was during the deployment, how big the flames were, the crashes that almost happened during the pursuit. Or worse, complaining about somebody else who didn't take charge when they could have. Same incidents, different interactions and leadership. Remember, being involved in the situation isn't your credentials. It's your responsibility and leadership during them that is. That's why you need to stop looking at your career as a collection of memorable stories and start looking at it as a collection of professional competencies that were molded under pressure. That pressure doesn't just test you, it's training you. Every difficult assignment requires you to make decisions without complete information. Every shift forces you to prioritize competing demands. Every leadership role requires you to balance mission success with taking care of your people. And every unexpected problem challenges your ability to remain composed, while those around you might be looking for someone else to make the call. They aren't simply things that you did. They're abilities you've developed over years of repetition. And here's where I think many veterans and first responders unintentionally sell themselves short. It's easy to assume that everyone has those abilities, but they don't. You operate in environments where accountability isn't optional. If you fail to communicate, people could get hurt. If you can't control your emotions, people lose confidence in you. If you freeze under pressure, someone else has to solve the problem. And all of that becomes our normal. So normal, in fact, that you stop recognizing it as a unique strength. But civilian organizations don't. Most companies put a lot of resources towards training and trying to teach their employees how to remain composed when things are uncertain. They invest in leadership development programs focused on communication, conflict resolution, emotional intelligence, decision-making, and resilience. Whereas you've practiced those skills when the consequences were real. Now, that doesn't mean you should walk into an interview and expect people to automatically appreciate that fact. Taking ownership isn't about convincing people how hard your job was. It's about owning how you performed inside difficult situations. Say, for example, someone asks you about a challenging situation. You could say, "We were incredibly shorthanded. The situation kept getting worse. Resources were limited, and everything was stacked against us." Now, granted, all of that might all be true, but notice where the focus stays: the situation. Now compare that response with, "We were operating with fewer resources than we wanted, so I focused on simplifying communication, clearly assigning responsibilities, and making sure everyone understood the immediate priority before we worried about the next problem." Now the focus isn't on what happened, it's on what you did. That's ownership. That's leadership. That's what employers recognize, because those same principles exist inside every organization, regardless of the industry. And here's another trap to avoid. Don't make your crucible your identity. Your career will have given you moments that change you forever. Some of them made you stronger. Some of them probably still stick with you. And some may have taught you lessons you wish you'd never needed to or wanted to learn. Yes, those experiences deserve a level of respect, but they shouldn't become the only way you describe yourself. The point isn't that you survived something difficult. The point is that it changed the way you operate and the way you lead. There's a reason why people naturally trust leaders who have navigated adversity. It's rarely because of the adversity itself. It's because adversity forces you to self-reflect. The best leaders don't come away from difficult situations saying, "Look what happened to me." They come away asking, "What should I do differently next time?" Which is where growth happens. Every difficult assignment you've had has probably taught you something about yourself. How you handle stress, how you triage and prioritize, and how you communicate. Maybe you discovered that those around you reacted more to your body language than to your words. Maybe you learned that people don't hear long explanations during stressful moments. Maybe you realized that remaining calm was contagious, or that admitting when you weren't sure actually built trust instead of weakening it. Those lessons aren't tied to a uniform. They're basic principles of being operationally effective. That's exactly how you should begin thinking about your career. Don't wait until you're filling out your retirement paperwork or that unplanned transition is staring you in the face. Pay attention now. After you have an incident, don't just ask yourself whether the mission was successful. Ask yourself, what capabilities you strengthened? Did your judgment improve? Did you become a better communicator? Did you learn to delegate more effectively? Did you discover that listening first produces better decisions? Did you become more comfortable making decisions when the solution wasn't immediately recognizable? Those are the things that your future employer will be hiring you for, because they'll need someone who already knows how to do them. The more you begin identifying those capabilities today, the easier it becomes to translate your experience when your transition gets here. Because by then, you won't just remember the moments that tested you. You'll understand exactly what they built inside you. However, if you want more information on this topic, along with more information on transition planning and preparation, I put out a weekly newsletter. Check out the link in the show notes to sign up. I know you'll get some benefit from it. Now, I need you to really hear me on this, because almost every veteran and first responder does the same thing when we step across that line into the civilian world. We view our past incorrectly. We believe that our value lies in the craziest stories we have. Or on the flip side, you think that your value lies in how well you can pretend those days never happened. But the truth is, your hardest day isn't what qualifies you. What qualifies you is what that day forced you to become. There's two traps we all fall into when we try to explain ourselves to civilians. Trap number one, the silence. You lock in those experiences and put them in an imaginary box. You tuck them away because you're scared that if a recruiter or a hiring manager hears about the incidents you were involved in or the firefights your team was in, they're going to look at you like you're broken. You worry that they'll think you have too much baggage. So you sanitize your story until it's almost lifeless. You can take all the fire and soul out of your history, but then wonder why you feel like an imposter when you're sitting in one of those interviews. However, there's trap number two, the war story. This is when you just recount the events. You tell the story. You talk about the blood, the smoke, the adrenaline. But here's what you have to understand. To a civilian hiring manager who has never lived in our world, those stories don't translate to value. They just sound like a movie script. And they don't know what to do with that information because they can't see how an overdose triage relates to their quarterly budget problems. And the worst part is, neither of these approaches actually work. Silence and overly downplaying your experiences can get you ignored. Whereas just sharing a bunch of war stories will likely get your file moved to the bottom of the pile or even the trash can. The hidden value of your experiences comes from how you translate it. Think about one of the worst experiences you've had on a shift or a deployment. That exact moment, you didn't have the luxury of pausing to think or freeze up. You had to make a decision and you had to act. But let's pull back the curtain on what was actually happening inside your brain during that chaos. You weren't just doing your job. you were operating at a level of performance that civilian companies spend thousands of dollars trying to train their people to achieve. Whereas when you survived that day, you didn't just get through it. You developed. You developed elite judgment. You learned how to make high-impact decisions with likely only a limited percentage of the information you needed. You learned composure. You kept your control and remained steady when normal people would be losing their minds. You developed accountability. You owned the outcome no matter how difficult it was. And there's adaptability. When the plan went sideways, you relied on your training and secondary options, or you formulated a new plan on the fly. That is who that day forced you to become. But if you can't articulate those lessons, your greatest professional development will remain virtually invisible to the rest of the world. Because if you just tell a hiring manager, "Yeah, I was a squad leader in a high-stress environment," they hear the words. They don't see the capability. On the other hand, what if you were to say, "In my previous career, I was trained to operate in environments where information was scarce, stakes were high, and uncertainty was the default standard. I learned how to keep my team focused, how to prioritize the most critical tasks, and how to make decisions that kept people alive. I don't get rattled when a project goes sideways because I've already faced some of the worst scenarios, and I've navigated myself and my team to a successful resolution." Hear the difference? That's translation. You aren't bragging about the event. You're proving the capability that the event forged in you. The bottom line is, your crucible is only a credential if someone else can recognize the development it produces. Translation, not the raw experience itself, is what earns you the opportunity. You need to show them exactly who you became in that fire. Well, let's take another quick break to acknowledge a sponsor of the podcast. When we come back, we'll close out this episode. There's a moment in life when you realize it was never about you. Grind, spelled GRND, is different. There's no I in it on purpose, because the mindset was never about ego. It's about the mission. Started by a former Army Ranger, it's not about where you are. It's about how you show up. Different lives, different pressures, but the same mindset. Grind isn't clothing you wear just to look good. It's a reminder of why you keep going when it gets tough, and you keep putting in the work when no one's watching. For the early mornings, the late nights, the reps that no one sees. This isn't just fashion, it's fuel. Because real work isn't loud, real effort doesn't need applause, and real purpose doesn't quit. Head on over to thegrndcollective.com and use the promo code TRANSITION15 for 15% off your order. One day, you're going to reach a point where people will be asking less about what you did in uniform and asking more about what you can do next. When that day comes, I hope your first instinct isn't to start listing assignments or memorable incidents. I hope you'll have spent enough time reflecting that you can confidently explain the person those experiences created, because that's what will resonate and that's what will move you forward. Those things are tied to a chapter of your life that, at some point, will come to an end. But your ability to push through uncertainty, earn trust when the pressure is high, solve problems when there isn't a clear answer, and stay composed when others are looking for direction, that belongs to you. And no transition can take that away. So start now. Pay attention to the moments that challenge you. Notice the situations that stretch your judgment, test your patience, or force you to become a better communicator. Every one of them is shaping the candidate that you'll eventually introduce to someone who will have never known you in uniform. That's why you should think differently the next time you're faced with a difficult day. Instead of asking, "How do I just get through this?" ask yourself, "What is this demanding of me?" Now, the answer may not be obvious immediately, but over time, you'll begin to see a pattern. Every challenge leaves you with something more valuable than another story to tell. It leaves you with evidence. Evidence that you can clearly think when situations are chaotic. Evidence that you can adapt when circumstances change. And evidence that you can lead when the outcome is uncertain. Your crucible isn't meant to be something you carry as baggage. It's meant to become proof of who you're still becoming. I appreciate you staying till the end. Staying all the way through helps the engagement ratings. As always, send me your comments. Be honest with me. Tell me what you like. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. That should be real easy to do. I can't make any changes unless you tell me what you need. Also, I ask that you please share the podcast with anybody who you think would benefit from and enjoy it. And if you're not already, please follow the podcast wherever you're getting this episode. Stay safe, and I'll catch you on the next one.